Ready to kick off, JC? You ready?
Yeah, let me just get the chat open so that way I can see questions, and we're good to go.
All right, guys. Well, welcome again. Happy November. It's already November, believe it or not, 2021. We've got a new website. So we switched our website and we switched everything about everything we do basically digitally, trying to get more technologically advanced. Sorry about telling you it was 1 p.m. Eastern, and then our email remind us at 11 a.m. without saying Mountain Time. So we got to get that fixed. We'll beat somebody up on that one, but it's always 1 p.m. Eastern, usually the first or second Monday of the month. So thank you again for joining. And this system should be much better at keeping you guys on track with what we're doing, what we're offering, free stuff we send out, what's available to you guys. And again, when you do join, you become we call 30-day ambassadors. Call us for any time over the next 30 days, no charge. We're here to help you, and we want to make sure you get it right the first time. Okay, let's see if we can move this along. Oh, this slideshow, John, I'm okay with the Zoom. Now I got to go ahead and let me see. Oh, there we go. Okay, we're good.
Also the technology guy, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. So any first-time callers or viewers, JC and I have been doing this for about 8 years. We primary consultants for the NSSF, National Shooting Sports Foundation, CJC out in Vegas this January. I am refraining from visiting this year. I've got other things to do, but JC will be on stage presenting on various topics as usual. Also, we're co-founders of FFL Consultants for all of those FFLs out there who are not members for the NSSF. We do everything from compliance to licensing to compliance to revocation, mitigation, inspection, security, insurance. You got a question, if you're a gun dealer, we probably have an answer for you and can put you in touch with the person you're looking for. And we also do those training seminars around the country every year with the ATF and FBI, so you may have seen us out there. All right. So in the next hour, and we always try to keep this to an hour, be respectful of your time. We're going to go ahead and give you definitely some clarification on what we see going on with the ATF right now. There's definitely a shifting of priorities. We want to make sure you guys are on top of that. We'll answer your questions if you got them. Anything goes, business, insurance, compliance, state, federal, whatever you need answered. You can ask here or get our information at the end, or just email or call us. Ask your questions, keep it interactive. Again, we'll protect your identity if you want to remain anonymous, and use that chat box simply to ask a question at the bottom of your screen. Today, we're going to give you a quick government update. There's not much going on. JC, please chime in on these if you have additional information. But the bottom line for this administration is zero tolerance for gun dealers. And everything we can interpret right now is due to the focus on supply chain, the bottlenecks at the ports, the recent state elections, the campaigns, the infrastructure bills, everything else going on is kind of taking the focus off of gun control, we think. We think there's just too many other bigger issues that are in the news and on everyone's mind right up front: inflation, gas prices, and more. And what we're seeing, we're not seeing anything rather on all of the bills that were introduced earlier this year since January, whether it be AR pistols, high capacity magazines, arm braces, background checks, red flag laws. The only thing that did take hold was the Russian basically embargo on any ammunition or firearms produced or manufactured in Russia. That did take effect last month. We talked about that. But other than that, we don't see anything on the plate that would impact you quickly, except for random inspections and the zero tolerance, which has been touted by Mr. Biden himself recently as his focus for restricting gun dealers from actually closing down gun dealers, revoking licenses, and having a zero tolerance on the process of transferring and selling firearms legally. Okay, there's no talk of illegals. There's no talk of trafficking. There's no talk of criminal activity and criminals using firearms to commit crimes. We still see the democratic and liberal approach to incarceration and release of prisoners and reduction of sentences in the larger metropolitan liberal cities. So what our concern has been all along is that the ATF can shift gears as they are, and we'll show you more in a minute about what we're seeing the activities by the field inspection team to yield, whether it be adverse actions and warnings and or revocations.
Yeah. We have quite a few FFL clients that are going through inspections right now. Everything looks really good for those. We're doing daily calls at the end of every business day just to see what the findings were, what the questions were asked, etc. The only thing I can tell you is we've also gained quite a few clients here in the last few weeks that have called us as a result of the inspection, asking us questions about what does this mean to me? And we're having to make determinations of whether or not it means revocation or warning conference, whatever adverse action. So if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you found something that's wrong, don't wait until the ATF shows up to fix it. Quite literally, you have to show them that you have taken some proactive measures to ensure that if there are violations, at least you did something to correct them. And I will tell you right now, that is your only way out. If you're not doing something to fix the errors, even if you find them after the fact, it may still be a violation. But the beauty of it is, and we'll get into an actual inspection that just happened recently here in a minute. The fact of the matter is that you have to be able to show them that you are taking proactive measures. Otherwise, when they write it up on their report of violations, put it in their system, which is being reviewed at the highest levels of the DOJ. You want some note put in there that says the FFL, the licensee, took corrective actions to fix this. You want that statement in your report of violations.
The other thing that JC already mentioned, if we see them out now in groves. Now we are a little worried about this infrastructure bill getting passed on Friday, the 1.2 trillion. We're trying to get the details on that to see how much of that is earmarked for DOJ or ATF specifically, and or the IRS. We heard that those three areas are definitely going to get some funding. And the worry always has been that the number on the street was $800 million for the ATF. And if in fact that happens, what does that really mean? How many more inspectors? They don't need another building, and they don't need to add to the campus, obviously, in Clarksburg, but they can obviously add people to their team. And that's what we worry about. Currently, JC, I think there's about 1,400 folks in the field doing inspections and or investigations.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but if they double that, what does that mean for the average FFL who hasn't hasn't been visited in 3 years, 5 years, or 6 years? So that's the big question mark. So we'll keep you, if we hear anything time sensitive, we'll blurt that out and get it out to all of you. But that's our concern. And the other thing we put here is no intense, no leniency. That's the overall focus of the ATF inspector walking in today. We've been saying it for months now. The same approach they had 2 years ago will not be the approach they have today when they show up. We'll get into the details in just a minute. And the last thing is always call us. Again, whether you're a client, a member, an ambassador, or just hearing this for the first time. When the ATF shows up, say hi, set them down, give them a bottle of water, put them in a room away from everyone else. Go to the phone, give us a ring. We'll help you through the process from A to Z. And our goal is to keep you in business. There's some little secrets, some little tweaks, some little hints and tips we can always provide you with along the way. And of course, let them know you have a consultant on call, whether you're NSSF or just FFL Consultants. Let them know they're very familiar with us over for all of our interactions. Tell them you're just going to let your coach, and that's a great way to call it. Your firearms coach. JC and JB will well know what those guys all over the country, most of the directors around the country, they'll be happy to hear that you have someone coaching you, to get your business on par with expectations and requirements. JC, you got all these numbers. I'm not even going to try to explain these.
Yeah. So here's the one caveat with these numbers, just so everybody is aware. These are NICS numbers, not actual sales transactions. because of the different state laws and things of that nature, and permits and things which relinquish you from having to do a background check, we feel that these numbers are pretty good, and it does correlate to sales transactions. However, they are not one-to-one. So chances are, and it's a very good chance, probably 99.9% chance that the numbers are much higher than this for states where NICS has exemptions and such. So, but this does paint a pretty good picture, month over month comparison for 2021. As predicted, we are actually up in the month of October, which just closed out a little over a week ago. Total sales were up 5.24%. As relates to September, we were only up about 1.5%. So, and we should see continue to see sales grow through November, and then we'll see a slowdown in December, as has been the trend for several years. You'll notice the permit recheck that has to do with your concealed carry permits. That's just them conducting new permit checks and then permit rechecks, because if you are a NICS exempt state, that permit has to be rechecked on a monthly basis or more regularly than that. So go to the next slide. There you go. Year-over-year sales data. You'll notice in 2020, we were up, I mean, as an industry, almost 40%. And now we're starting to see the trend for 2021. And nobody really expected to see 2021 continue with those numbers. I can't tell you that anybody in the industry would tell you that, oh yeah, we're going to see 2020 all over again. The only time you're going to see a pretty significant spike is if Biden does take some action that scares everybody. But as it is right now, if you look at the numbers, I mean, we're down 30%, but when you look at the overall number, I mean, we're still up from 2019 and 2018 by a couple million. So, you know, just take it for what it is. Continue to see the slowdown. I think it's going to flatten out again. I don't know if we're going to see a continuation of the 12 million numbers, but we'll probably be between 12 and 14 million for a little while. We have three more years of Biden, and God only knows what he's going to do. You know, all of the houses of Congress and the presidency and everything, I mean, it's all under Democrat control, and he still can't do anything. So that's the beauty of that. And hopefully we'll see some change come 2022. Next slide.
DC, what about supply chain? You think these numbers with what's going on are?
Yeah, I think a little bit of it has to do with supply chain. I mean, what we saw happening there at the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021 with the reductions in ammo and stuff, we definitely saw people kind of sluggish on buying anything because they couldn't get ammo. But ammo really is starting to come around again. So especially in our bigger dealers, we're seeing, you know, pallets of ammo being distributed. So things are catching up a little bit. But, you know, yes, absolutely. Supply chain has had an impact on this, as well as pricing. You're starting to see pricing flatten out again a little bit. It's not down tremendously, but you are starting to see some of the prices that we saw pre-pandemic, you know, the $200 Turkish shotguns, maybe they're $250, but you're starting to see those prices come down.
On the earlier group, we were talking about the bottlenecks in the bays here, the parts and pieces, whether it be springs for semi-autos or triggers or hammers or whatever these parts and pieces coming from China are. You know, this is going to be a balancing act right through Christmas, because we're not sure about the manufacturer workflow. We're not sure which brands are going to be distributing versus not distributing. Mm-hmm. So it's we know I couldn't answer it this morning earlier today, and I can't answer it now. What should I mark up? Should I mark down? Should I sell out? Should I hold? Again, we look at pricing based on you know, what's available online. Try some of the bigger RSR, Davidson's, Lip CC with their selling out gun broker. Mm-hmm. And try to price accordingly based on supply and demand, I guess.
You've got to shop your competition, and competition, both e-commerce as well as your local competition. See what people are selling, see who has a lot of what. and just start watching. If you're not getting the PSA, the Palmetto State Armory emails, get those. That's a good test of where prices are going. Watch Gun Broker a little bit. Obviously, you got a mix, a mush of quite a few different dealers there, as well as civilians and such, so, or non-licensees. So you got to watch all that stuff. And then, obviously look at competitive shops there in the area, and definitely go and look at the ones that are similar to you, but also look at the nicer shops, the bigger shops, and see where they're going with pricing. You don't have to be at the same price point of them, but you should definitely focus your energy on, coming in close to them. They're already there. So, the customer's already there. So if you can sell it to them for $5 or $10 more than the competition, if you're a good salesperson, hey, they're already in your store. Why, you're going to go down the street to buy it for $5 or $10 less at $4 a gallon of gasoline? I don't think so. So just make sure you're doing those competitive shops.
I'm sorry, and talk to your sales reps. Your sales reps, if you're not talking to them, I haven't talked to them in a while, get them on the horn and see what they can tell you about what they expect through the holidays, obviously.
Yeah. For those of you that are pawn dealers, just some interesting numbers here. Pawn redemptions. This is Nick's data as well, month-over-month comparison. It's been pretty slow here lately. I would expect, you might see an increase in pawns coming up because you are entering Christmas season. So we'll see what happens. I know that the crew this morning had some feedback on this. So if anybody has any questions on the pawn data, please feel free to interject. This just kind of gives you a good idea of where things are as far as pawns go, month over month.
Yeah, and for those of you not in the pawn business, high redemptions in October is mostly due to hunting season, getting guns out of storage, out of pawns. And, go ahead and take those into the woods.
Yep. All right. And then here's your year-over-year comparison. Total redeemed. We're actually quite a bit down from 2020. Obviously, people needed money in 2020. And then obviously then you got the big scare, right? The pandemic. So everybody's pulling their guns out because they're afraid their homes are going to get burglarized or something else, or they're concerned about the rioters and all of that. So next slide. I think that's it for the data. So there you go.
So
any questions on the data? No? All right, very good.
Everybody hates numbers, John. You know how that goes.
I know, but it's good information.
All right, numbers give us a headache. All right, inspections. Hey, so we keep talking about the zero tolerance, and that's the term that has been spouted by Mr. Biden and Merrick Garland in terms of gun control. So what is zero tolerance? We want to take you down a new road of zero tolerance. We haven't spoken to this degree at all in any of our presentations, but this is what we're dealing with today, based on inspections over the last 45 days and several clients who are now in revocation. Here's the scary part: is two that we're dealing with actually skip the warning step. Okay, we don't know. We're still trying to deal with this. We haven't received the official letters where the inspectors are even verbalizing that they'll be pushing for revocation based on the closing conference of the inspections. And we're getting our guns loaded, literally. We've got lawyers involved who are going to react accordingly when these formal letters are issued, because there's only 14 days to react from the delivery and receipt of that notice from the ATF to basically argue, present your case, and respond to the revocation intent to revoke. So we're ready. But here's what we can talk about is the zero tolerance is surely purely zero tolerance. Yeah, we used to talk about minor versus major type of violations and what to worry about, what degree of worry you should have. And here's what we're telling you today: major and minor are out the window. It's all violations. We're going to go through some details in a few minutes. Missing importer or manufacturer. We've been talking about importer and manufacturer for a year now as a highlight. We've issued documentation regarding how to train your employees. If you need that, just drop us an email. and we'll send that to you. We'll also make that available on the new website as soon as we have that resources and tools page available for you. The abbreviated importer or manufacturer, Smith & Wesson, again, we've been saying S&W is not a legal name for a firearms manufacturer. The one that makes the guns is called Smith & Wesson, not S&W. So there's a long list of those where you need to get up to par with the expected name of the gun manufacturer and or importer, because it is what's imprinted on your firearm. It's not, S&W is not imprinted on any firearm. It's Smith & Wesson. The same thing with CAI. CAI is not imprinted on most firearms. Now, in some cases it is where it's imported, but most of the times it's Century Arms International. So you really need to be looking at the gun, at the steel, at the metal, and transferring that engraved markings of the firearm into your acquisition side of your book, and then over to the 4473. Lower versus lower receiver. Again, a lower is not a qualified firearm piece or firearm in and of itself. It's formally known as a lower receiver. These are all issues that we're getting cited on during ATF inspections. NA versus non-visible is a big difference. NA means not applicable. Many people use NA for a variety of entries, but non-visible in cases where a serial number is partially visible or not visible because it's an old antique gun and it's rubbed off, or maybe there's a marking on the firearm that's inaccessible due to the way the firearm's built, and it's on a it's hidden or concealed beneath a shroud of some type. So there's, using the right words is important, because again, you can be cited for it. Missing apartment numbers. We've talked about this, I think, forever. Everyone's talked about, lane, road, avenue, street, circle. A street address has to be complete, because the ATF is most concerned with where that firearm is going to be stored and where's it going to reside tonight after it leaves your place of business. After it's transferred, where is that firearm going to live? And they want to, in case they have to go retrieve it for whatever reason, they want to know exactly. And if you're missing the completion of the address, the street, road, lane, etc., that could be deemed an incomplete address and therefore an incomplete 4473 transfer. Incomplete NICs, missing NICs is usually not an issue. But if you have 8 numbers instead of 9, or somebody transposed a number incorrectly, or you can't read it, we're going to talk about legibility in a minute, it's going to be deemed incorrect, and you do not want to have that. You don't want to have a lot of those, if any at all. More on zero tolerance here. County, we're still seeing United States or USA in the county box, even though it's been expanded to read county and or parish. We need to be making sure that doesn't happen. Provide a list of counties to your gun counter for counties in your area, in your state, because people don't know the county they live in, or maybe they recently moved there and now they don't know the county they're a new resident.
And make sure it's spelled right. We've had a couple issues here lately where the IOI has actually dinged the FFL for misspelling of a county name, and it wasn't even a county he was familiar with. So he didn't even know how to spell it himself. So, but it was a violation. So you want to make sure.
Yeah, it's okay. You can have a list of counties there so folks know exactly how to spell it.
Yep.
Abbreviations are sadly one of our issues is out in California, where everybody's born in Los Angeles. So what do they put for place of birth? LACA. And unfortunately, LA is not an acceptable spelling of a city called Los Angeles, or county. I say a city. So LACA, even though it wasn't wrong 3 years ago when they were inspected, it's wrong today. And every one of those 4473s is in violation and incomplete. Box 2111.1, alien immigration information. If they're not, a lot of people just don't get this question. They don't understand it. The average person reading this form doesn't understand anything about the alien immigration requirements, and they leave the box blank if they think it doesn't apply to them, but it must have a no answer. If it's not filled in, it's incomplete, even though it's one of those questions, we have to have it completed. Otherwise, you're going to have an incomplete form cited on your report of violations. Box 27D is still big. We talk about this over and over. If you have a delay, you must have something in box 27D. So if it's a delay in 27A, box 27D must have something filled in, even if it's the Brady date expiration transfer where you waited your respective days to transfer the firearm after not receiving any response from the FBI.
And remember, it's a delayed response. It's not in queue. Remember, there are several states now I know out there that it's in the queue. Do not mark delay if it's just in the queue. Okay.
Right. And again, if you're doing a point of contact at the state level, please call us. You've got questions. All this state, we're not even talking about it today, but I think out of over 80 calls we had last month, 20 of them was state related. Folks from other states buying guns here. Can I do that? Is there a problem? Can I transfer it, et cetera? We answer those questions all day long, and there's no one list. Even we have to look 3 or 4 places sometimes to get you the right answer, but give us a ring. That's critical for compliance. Timely completion of your A&D. I think I already mentioned earlier, we had that issue up front, actually in a store where there was an ATF inspection ongoing. It was ongoing, and they were shipping guns out for transfers at the end of the day, and the inspector was keen enough, I was going to say sly enough, but keen enough to go and look at the receiving dock before UPS arrived, and he asked about the guns being transferred out for the day, and there was 3 or 4 of them, and they are already disposed out of the A&D book, and it wasn't even the store's fault. Well, it was the store's fault. It was the digital software they were using when they completed the sale in their POS system. Their digital software A&D book automatically disposed of the firearm upon completion of a sale. And being that the firearm was sitting in a box on the back shipping dock addressed to a gun dealer in another state, it was marked as inaccurate. The records were marked inaccurate because they were already disposed while the firearm was still residing on the premises of the gun dealer. Is this far reaching? I don't know. Okay, is this something we saw 3 years ago? Definitely not. So beware, especially if you have the digital systems now, digital POS, where A&D is integrated, and that might be occurring in your place of business. And then 3310.4 and 33.12 for southern border states. I explained this, somebody dug into this morning. So John, can you just repeat why this has to be done same day again?
So these forms are for prevention of firearms trafficking. So, and we run into this a lot where the local police department, which you are also supposed to submit a copy of the 3310.4 and 10.12 to the local police department. Whether they say they want them or not, you have to submit them. So just get a generic email address and ask them for a generic email address and get these things in. If they are sent the next morning, which used to be fine. I mean, yes, they have to be in by regulation at the end of day, but ATF was a little bit lenient on it. And if it was gone the next morning, they were happy with it. You have to show proof that you submitted them by end of day. No longer can you wait until the next morning. Somebody has to send these things off at the end of the day. And they do have to go to your local law enforcement agency. I don't care if they throw them away when they get them. That's their problem, not yours. You're required by federal law to submit them to your local agency. And it's all for counter firearms trafficking measures. So the ATF is made aware of it, and your local police department is made aware of it. I'm going to tell you right now, we've had 2 or 3 now where the IOIs have shown up for inspection, and they've advised the FFL that they're missing 40 submissions of 3310.4s. And luckily, all of our clients have heeded our warning and our guidance, and they keep tremendous records of their submissions of these. And those violations went away when the FFL was able to prove that they did submit them in a timely manner.
John mentioned trafficking a couple times. This is purely an anti-firearms trafficking program that the ATF manages by the minute. Here's how it works. You send these forms in at the end of the day, and I'm John Bacher. So John Bacher bought 3 firearms at one dealer today in Denver, Colorado. That 3 handguns, that form gets submitted. As soon as they get that information, it's entered into a computer at the criminal side of the ATF, the criminal division side. They say, John Bacher bought 3 guns at this dealer today in Denver. Okay. Now, tomorrow, if I go, or later in the afternoon, if I go to another dealer and I buy 2 guns or 5 guns, again, that dealer is going to submit that timely by end of day into ATF. And again, they're going to enter that information into the computer, and a red flag is going to pop up someplace and say, hey, John Bacher is buying guns at 2 dealers in 1 day or 2 days, and he's in Denver, Colorado. And they start to flag John Bacher. And next thing, on the 3rd day or within a couple of days, I'm buying more guns down the road or in another neighboring state. The ATF criminal investigators will get in touch with gun dealers in that area using either the alert system or call direct, and say, if John Bacher shows up in your store, don't sell him any guns, call us immediately. And they already have the local law enforcement on notification that they may need their help. And they will literally, when John Bacher shows up again, send law enforcement over to either interview that person, detain them, check for the guns, ask them where they are, provide them, where are they in your trunk, are they at home, and do a verification of those purchases. And secondly, they may do a search warrant on John Bacher's house next week and say, hey, this guy bought 20 guns last week, let's go make sure he still has them. That's the time sensitivity behind that program is critical. Mm-hmm. And I think explaining this when I explain this on site, the dealer, the person processing them says, oh my God, nobody ever told me that.
Yeah. And
they wait till Friday to send them all in or batch them or do whatever they do. It's no longer acceptable, and will be in complete violation of the law if you're not sending them in same day. And by end of business.
We have 2 FFLs right now. One was missing 3 3010.4s, and the other one was missing 4 3310.4s, both adverse action warning conference.
JC, what's the best practice for documenting how you send those in?
I'm going to tell you right now, the best way to approach these is to email them into the ATF and try to get that email address from your local law enforcement agency. So that way you can copy them both on the same email, and then copy yourself on there or create some generic email account where you can actually forward the email to yourself as well. So that way you have proof, evidence that you submitted them. We are seeing it more and more. I want to say at least a dozen in the past month or two, where the numbers that the ATF IOI came on site with and the numbers that were submitted to the ATF were very different. I mean, we're talking 40s, 30s, 20s. They say that they're missing these forms, but all of our FFLs thus far have been able to prove that they did submit them in a timely manner.
Right. And one of our listeners today is also he still faxes and prints out that fax verification on each and every one of these. And it's a lot of paper, but he was in a pinch and never wanted to be cited for this again, and said, darn it, I'm going to put a program in place that is 100% compliant. And it's a wonderful way to go if you're not doing the email and copying yourself.
It's tedious, but it'll pay off if you get inspected. Trust me.
And oh, by the way, you'll see, and again, you'll see here shortly how if this form is not attached to the qualifying ATF that sparked the reason for that form to be submitted, it will be a violation. They cannot be in a separate file. They cannot be filed in any type of order elsewhere. They have to be attached to the 4473 that prompts the requirement for that activity. Okay. And we talked about legibility. Again, you can chat. If you got questions, throw them into the chat, or just raise your hand, press your space bar to talk if you're on mute. We take questions all along the way here. Legibility is becoming a bigger and bigger concern. I've always said on my visits, if I can't read it, the inspector's not going to be able to read it. And people say, well, what do I do if my guys can't write or my girls can't write? I said, well, then, just figure out what you can do, because they're jeopardizing your license, your business, and your business longevity. If they can't print neatly so that an inspector walking in here who's never been here before can look at this form and decipher clearly what the numbers or letters are, it's going to be in violation of law. And think about that form being pulled 5 or 10 years down the road for a trace. Is somebody going to, at that point in time, want to try to figure out, any of those numbers, or refer back to the A&D for a serial number, for example? So the long story short is legibility must be good, okay? And in a lot of cases, better than where it is today. You probably all have one person on staff, if you're running a store, that just doesn't do a great job with this. So, but I want to highlight this because this did come up this past week with a client. They didn't want to, they said, we have customers who can't write. And we all know that. We have customers who can't read, and there's ways to handle that, and they can't write. We tell the story about the blind customers buying guns. They're allowed to. There's ways to do that too. But if the transferee filling out the form is just not printing right, not writing right, you can't read his handwriting. It is the transferee's, here's the rule. If the transferee or buyer's name is illegible, the transferee or seller must print the buyer's name above the name written by the buyer. So you can do that. You can, as a seller, go in and print above their name. And what we see, you don't have to initial and date it, it's not a correction, but we suggest in box 32, put a little note that said, buyer name, line 10 printed by employee John Bacher. Okay, so make a little note, box 32 is our favorite box. So on the customer's name, do the best they can, but go ahead and write the name, print the name if you have to. Serial numbers are horrendous. There's not a day I visit a gun dealer and I have to go back and either go find a firearm or go back to the acquisition side of the book and look for the correct serial number, because I can't tell if a 5 is an S or a 4 is a 9 or a 2 is a Z. Make sure we can legibly and clearly decipher those letters and numbers. Caliber and gauge. Amazing that people can screw that up, but sometimes I have to figure out if it's a 10 or a 12, or 9 or a 7. I mean, you just can't figure out these numbers sometimes, and it's because we're rushing, going too fast, and just want to get it done. The next transaction number, big issue here. You'll see in a minute. If the ATF inspector can't legibly decipher the numbers and letters in that next number, between zeros and X's and Z's and 2s and 7s and 3s, and it's amazing that so many issues occur with the NICS number when you're trying to translate that we just don't take a little more time to get it right the first time. And then corrections and initials and dates. This is coming more and more into play. We're stressing more and more about this. But yes, some of the issues recently are initials but not dated, or just one line through the error and it was corrected but not initial and dated at all. And the inspectors are going to be suspicious if there's no dates with the initials on the correction. And we kind of joke about this, but we're going to just put it out there that, in all of the inspections we've done, JC, I don't know how many we've done, hundreds of dealers over the years. It's very rare that we ever see a photocopy of a page in question where an error was made, corrections made on the photocopy of the page of the 4473, and then initial and dated after the fact and put back in with the original 4473. And I think, for whatever reason, that doesn't happen to the degree that the ATF inspectors think it should be. And so they're going back and questioning all of the initials, but no date on corrections on the original form. There's a process stipulated as to how to do this correctly. So either do it on the day of the transfer, initial and dated, or go ahead and do that photocopy. If you need help figuring any of that out, give us a ring. We'll clearly explain all of that to you and make sure it's all filed accordingly. We don't want you to lose your license because of something as simple as this. And JC, before I run into the detail, anything else there?
Yeah, no, you covered it all. Just, you guys have to be really careful now. We can't reiterate that enough.
Yep.
You really need to be paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah, so we cut and pasted some to protect, you know, we eliminated the FFL information here, but you know, if you haven't seen it, if you haven't been inspected, if you knew, or you haven't seen a report in a while, or you got a good inspection last time around and never saw a report of violations, here's last week's report. And this is where we're spending a lot of our time. And we will, when a client or NSSF or one of our clients are just out of the blue, I mean, one gun dealer just found us on Google. They got a revocation letter, and we will drop everything and work on our revocation clients very quickly just to make sure we're ready for the next day. You know, this, again, specific steps to take, or even warnings. I mean, you get the warning letter, or you have to go to a warning conference. It's a very similar activity. But here's the statutes. I mean, by statute in a left column here, regulations, you know, there's many, I don't even know how many there are anymore, how many different statutes you must follow as a gun dealer when completing paperwork, A&D, the transfer, and the other forms. And in this case, because of time, I'll rush through this a little bit, but you know, 192 forms had issues with 3310.4s. And even here it says ensure completed ATF forms are attached to the respective ATF form. Now, in this case, this gun dealer was filing them separately. He had 196 instances and 192 forms not filed with his 4473s. This was not one of our regular clients. Somebody had just called us because they needed help and didn't know. Nobody ever told him that was a requirement. He thought he was doing it right and hasn't been inspected in 7 years. The next one, failure to initiate a new NICS check after the 30-day expiration check. Well, the same person, again, was using a calendar, which in some cases is 31 days. So they just figured, well, if it was, you know, September 6th to October 6th, that should be 30 days, right? Well, guess what? It was 31 days. And in 8 different cases over the last year, they transferred a gun on the 31st day of a month, or 31 days after the original NICS check. They didn't realize, and they got obviously big trouble for this. And this is just a partial example to show you, but each and every little NICS check is going to show you, is going to be verified, documented, and cited. Every little error. This is his 4473. This is another dealer who had an issue with his A&D. It was 4473s was great, but the A&D book was horrible. And they had corrections with no initials and dates. They had whiteout. We keep talking about whiteout not being permissible. And this guy had whiteout all over his books. The ATF wants to see what information was there before the error was corrected, and then what it was corrected to. So he had 256 errors in his A&D book for they went back a little more than a year because they wanted to see if it was more than a year, and it was more than a year. So they're allowed to do that. I think in this case, it was 4 years since the last inspection. So I think they went back 18 months on his audit. That was a significant amount of errors. And we had to drop everything because at the bottom here it says, provide proof of A&D updates by October 22nd, 2021. They gave us 7 days, they gave the dealer 7 days to make all the corrections, print all the copies. His A&D book was paper. You can imagine how many copies that was. Pack them up, organize them, show the error, show the correction, and FedEx them to the ATF office by October 22nd. So this is the type of stuff you're going to be able to expect it to jump and run real fast if, in fact, your paperwork's not up to par. Failure to record NICS contact information. This had 23 instances and 20 forms. He wasn't missing NICS information. He didn't do background checks without NICS numbers or background checks done. They couldn't read them. So ensure that all the background check information is obtained is accurately recorded on all ATF forms. It was inaccurate. They couldn't figure out the 2s or the Zs or the 7s or the Xs or you know. So again, here's a legibility issue clearly coming into play.
And keep in mind with the NICS background checks, if you haven't been inspected, they are going to show up with a report showing every NICS transaction number or point of contact state control number, and they are going to match them up 1 for 1. So they are going to find every 4473 and match those up. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, here's a catch-all. This is sad but true. The CFR 478.21 allows them to cite you again for forms that are failure to complete forms as prescribed. So if you read through all these, it actually has many different little things in there that were already mentioned under other statutes, such as the NICS background check. So they got another 35 citations just to pile on in simple words to the form not being completed or not being completed accurately. Missing, oh, here, failure to record or verify ID on ATF form 4473. This one was this one literally had birth dates being input as expiration dates on several of these, because in the state where this occurred, the expiration date or the expiration date and date of birth are right next to each other. And one's on top of the other, and one employee was just putting the wrong date in, and the double check wasn't working. The double check of the form wasn't working in that store very well. And here's the detail, just in case you haven't seen it or never seen it. Here's what the detail behind a summary report would just look at is going to look like. This is just a partial page, obviously, but they had 23 violations here. Here's every form that citable section refers to. And you can see next to each one that's in this under one regulation is showing you all the different things that the respective 4473 was in violation with: incorrect manufacturer model, missing importer, incorrect model, incorrect serial number. So again, this is that catch-all, one of those catch-all categories where you can relist the violations as being incomplete. So, hey, guys and girls, it's details, details, details. We strongly recommend and always preach, take the information off the firearm. What's engraved and marked in the firearm is the information you have to log into your A&D book and also over to your 4473. No abbreviations, just exactly as it appears on the firearm itself. And again, it's all about the trace. In the end, if somebody picked up the gun at a crime scene or found it on the side of the road, what markings would they use to trace that information all the way back through the system? And then double and triple check. We can't reiterate enough. Double check your forms 4473s before every gun leaves your building, before every transfer. Have another person review that form, and definitely before it gets filed at the end of the day or the end of the week, do a triple check. And this goes for while doing your inventories as well. Make sure you're not doing what we call a paper inventory, where you're just yelling guns or tag numbers off your gun on the wall to the report number. Make sure you're checking the engraved information on the firearm to what's in the inspector's report for the A&D log when they come to visit.
Yep.
And JC, I left a little time for questions.
Yeah, keep in mind as well that these inspections that are occurring, the IOIs are required to enter the information into a database that is now reviewed by senior leadership at both the ATF and DOJ. And leadership at ATF headquarters is being basically challenged by the Department of Justice to actually push down on the field divisions and say, why did you not revoke that license? And the director of industry operations and the SAC, special agent in charge of the field division, has to provide a response. So I'm telling you right now, if you have mistakes, pick up the phone and call us. We will walk you through how to correct those properly and how to document things, so at least you're proactive in your approach and you can give that field division leadership some ammunition to fight for you. Trust me, they don't want this to be this way. That is the one thing I want to reiterate. The vast majority of field division leaders, they don't want to have this type of relationship with you. They are being challenged to have this type of relationship. So you have to give them something that they can fight for you. So let's go ahead and take questions.
I have a question on the correction process.
Sure.
I noticed, with the abbreviation, I'm probably guilty of it. Now, how do I go back and, I'm going to go through all my paper after this and make sure, but being proactive.
Yep. So if you find corrections in a post-transfer situation, obviously you can only make corrections to the sections of the 4473 that you're responsible for. The customer has to make corrections to the other sections. That's first and foremost. If it's a post-transfer situation, the gun's already gone and you're just doing a review from a couple months ago, and you can make a correction, go ahead and make a photocopy of the page that the error exists on, and then make the correction on that photocopied page, not on the original, and then include that photocopy in with the 4473 initialed and dated. And that shows the IOI that at least you're taking a proactive approach and you're identifying the violations and correcting them.
Now, same
They
day,
still violate you for it, but at least in their notes, they can state that the FFL, the licensee, has made corrections.
and Tom, that's going to be, that'll be a correction, but you remember, you can make whatever corrections you want same day before, same day without updating.
Right, yeah, I'm just gonna go through and some of the things you're saying, like the county, I've been seeing that a lot, and then Smith and Wesson, S&W, those kind of little individual things, so I just want to check and make sure.
Yeah.
Someone called last week doing a similar exercise after watching one of our YouTube videos, and I said, listen, add, you don't have to CAI, for example, always comes up. Century Arms, they're an importer, they're a manufacturer, they're depending on which firearm it is, right? So they might be the importer and manufacturer. So he had CAI on all of his forms. He said, do I cross it out and fix it? I said, no, just add, if you got space in that box, like S&W, if you add Smith and Wesson next to S&W, don't cross out S&W.
Right.
Add it, make it an addition, not a correction. And the ATF will decide how they deal with that when they review your forms. We always tell everybody too, make sure you're always using the same color pen there at the counter. Anyway.
Yeah. The other thing we would tell you too is anytime you're making, if you're making corrections that are, somewhat serious, there's a problem and you're trying to get it corrected, do a little memo for record to attach to the 4473. That'll help you in explaining what happened to the IOI when they do an inspection. They'll immediately see, hey, listen, there's a memo for record right here that says, I contacted this customer on 3 different occasions to try to get them to come in and make corrections to the section that they screwed up. Contacted them this date, phone left a voicemail. Contacted them this date, phone left a voicemail. Sent a certified letter this date, receipt this date, still no contact. So at least give them something tangible that they can hold on to and say, well, at least he's trying.
Yeah, we say half a problem is always better than a full problem.
Yep.
Right. Doing nothing is negligent, and we didn't get into that this week, guys. The willful negligence and carelessness, what you call it, whatever you want to call it, in today's world is known as zero tolerance.
Yep.
And again, we'll push out more information to you on this as we get our new website up and all the information loaded in there. But yeah, half a problem is better than no problem. And then box 32, there's just too many stores I visit, gun dealers I visit. They have nothing in box 32. They don't even have the initial sort of person who double checked the form in box 32. Box 32 is, we made a big play to get that box made larger for your notes, so that you can have all this information available to the inspector when they sit down and look at each and every form. You'll never remember this stuff, especially 2 or 3 years down the road. So utilize box 32, put your notes in there, and in addition to what JC's saying. Great question, Tom.
And Tom, if you have something unusual, just pick up the phone and give us a call.
Yeah. I have had a couple of inspections, and I haven't had one lately, but the other ones were non-confrontational, more helpful, but it seems like that might have gone down the river now.
They're not confrontational. They're just not given any leeway anymore. They can't. They're being held to account. So,
right.
And they don't want to lose their job, obviously. So when was the last time you were inspected?
I would say 2017, 2018. I moved from Florida to Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeesh, you're probably in the window.
Right. That's why I've been going through stuff.
Yeah.
I got a question sent in yesterday for this, asking about sending in 3310.4's 3-day late due to offsite gun show. Is that a violation?
Yes, it is. That is 100% a violation, and you are required to send it to the jurisdiction that the gun show occurred in. So if it is not in the same county or municipality that your premise, that license is issued to, you have to send it into the jurisdiction where the sale actually occurred. Still required to send it in by end of the same business day. That doesn't mean don't send it in. If you send it in late, you send it in late. Just keep record of it and create a memo for record that says it was a gun show. And I was reviewing paperwork and identified that a multi-sale occurred and blah, blah, blah. So still going to be a violation, but at least give them something tangible to hold on to say, yep, he had a violation. He realized he had a violation, submitted it anyway, and created a memo for record stating why.
Here's another good one. Dealing in used guns, regularly get old antique guns and cannot, or foreign guns, World War II, do not know exactly what caliber they are. How do I list?
No visible markings. No, do yourself a favor, inspect the firearm really closely, see if you can take the stock off. Sometimes it's underneath the wood. But if you can't find anything, just no visible caliber, no visible markings.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a requirement, JC, I mean, you can use your knowledge. Like, so I had this a couple weeks ago with a Japanese firearm brought back by a soldier, obviously, hopefully, and everything was, all the writing was in Japanese. So the caliber, but he knew it was whatever the caliber was.
Yeah.
Can you he checked the bore. He actually had a shell, a similar shell, size shell. He kind of was basically certain to the caliber.
Right.
He says, I can't figure. He goes, I don't know if it's marked. It's not marked. Can I list this caliber? I said, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Do your best to mark it, whatever you think it is as well. But if there's no visible markings and you have no idea, then that's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, I think I answered this in person for one of our listeners. We said, he's in Pennsylvania, had an expired PICS check. They do Pennsylvania State Police verification there. And one of his employees gave away the gun after the 5-day expiration date. How do I handle and file the paperwork? In this case, he had to the instruction was you just don't update it. I mean, it's done, what's done is done. So he had to call state police, Pennsylvania. Some of you guys have to do this out there with your respective states. Get either an approval or a denial on it. And he got a denial. He had to contact the customer, have him come back in with the firearm, bring it back into his acquisition, resubmit all of the paperwork and do it correctly. And again, listed in box 32, who he talked with, what instruction he received. And he basically corrected an illegal transfer because it was transferred illegally. But again, it's half a problem versus a full problem. And if the ATF finds it before you tell them or before you correct your issue, that's definitely a bigger issue. Okay. We'll stay on it's 12 o'clock, everyone. We'll stay on a few more minutes. We do have we have a lot of written in questions, but
it's 12 o'clock.
Oh, it's 12 o'clock Denver. It's 2 o'clock New York time, right? All right. Thank you, everyone, if you have been here and got to run, we'll make sure we see you next month. But if you're sticking on, we got a few more questions if we want to go through, or if you guys want to ask.
What did I need to keep track of? Yeah, but I want to make sure that there's nothing.
JC, I got one here from Mississippi asking about transferee with USCIS document and missing his state ID. Well, I don't know how we're missing it. Can I use an alternate form of residency, supplement 26B?
So he doesn't have an ID?
Yeah, it says he's missing his state ID.
Yeah.
So a photo ID. So the only one that I'm sorry, maybe he has an out-of-state ID. I don't have all the detail on this one. So if somebody has an out-of-state ID, but they have proof of residency in state,
oh yeah,
their photo ID from another state is acceptable.
As long as it's still valid, yep,
and unexpired, even though it has a different address on it.
Yep.
You can use a supplementary address document for line 26B, like auto registration, fishing license. We all know about
combination of items, but it has to meet the regulation. Yep.
And in this case, if it's not that issue, if he has a passport, he can use that identification. If it's an illegal alien immigrant, they could use their I-94 card, the green card, as a photo ID. So there's a variety of photo IDs, government issued, that can be used if they don't have a state ID,
Exactly.
driver's license. Asking for a formal to acquire used guns. Oh, is there any formal process when acquiring used guns from a customer other than the A&D process to show chain of custody?
No. Well, there are some state laws out there that require some different things, but for the most part, you acquire it from them. I would definitely do a bill of sale, and I would get a copy of their driver's license, so that way you can prove who you bought it from. And then obviously you're required to enter it into your acquisition disposition records with their name and address.
Right. So I guess the question would be, I'm not sure which state this is from. I know who it is, but I don't know who it is. But anyway, yeah, state requirements obviously are in play if you have any state requirements, but
yeah, there's a handful of states that have some requirements, but for the most part, the vast majority, you don't have to worry about.
Right. Unless you're a pawnbroker, you might have state pawnbroker requirements and use the online leads program for checking stolen guns. But for the most part, there wouldn't be anything other than putting their information into the A&D.
Yep. If you have a secondhand dealer's license or pawnbrokers, obviously, but if you're purchasing used firearms, some municipalities, a great example, Aurora, Colorado, has a requirement for non-pawn businesses to obtain a secondhand dealer's license. And there are what we call cooling off periods for that device, that property, that firearm, that you have to wait before you can actually put it out for sale. So.
Right. Good.
Yeah.
And I like your idea about keeping copies. If I was a gun dealer, I'd have my secret file in the back of copies of everyone's ID I bought a gun from, just in case that ever comes up, right?
Yep. Yep.
And just for you guys know, we have a form available. If you do this, we have a form available. We call it an affidavit of ownership that we use primarily for the pawnbrokers. That is for used guns. You're buying used guns from folks. It says, I, John Bacher, certify that this is my gun. I live at this address. I present them my ID. I affirm that this gun is not lost or stolen, blah, blah, blah. So if you are looking for something like that, drop us an email. Here's the last one, John will do. This one's complicated. Asking for clarification. A Mississippi gun deal, Mississippi military purchase where the transferee is based in Mississippi, but living in Louisiana, New Orleans. I guess it's close by, across the river.
Yeah. Okay.
He has an Oregon driver's license with an LA address. Los Angeles address.
Yeah, I don't get this. I don't know where these are coming from. This is the second one we've had this year where an individual had an address not in the state of issuance for the ID. In this case, what I would tell you is because they're a military member, where they're living is where they're living. Use their military orders. Make sure that they are permanent change of station orders, not temporary, nothing like that, not temporary duty assignment, none of that. We've run into that quite a bit here lately too. People have been providing temporary orders and use the military base as the place of residence.
And their photo ID basically can be from any state as long as it's a driver's license, even though it's got a California address. They're not using that as the place of residence for the firearm filing the transfer, so the military orders would suffice on the document.
And then if it's really screwy like this, you can certainly, as long as you can write neatly and small enough, document all the different addresses, because that's just insane.
Right. Right. All right, last one here. Friend from Texas asking how to list a World War II 1911 handgun with limited markings. It's an old REM/US Army curio.
Say that again.
How do I list a World War II 1911 handgun with limited marking? The only thing visible is REM/US Army, and it's 45 caliber.
Yeah, obviously you mark whatever information's available. I would tell you, if it says REM US Army, use that as your manufacturer. And then 45 caliber, obviously it's a 1911. So I would just mark it with whatever information that you have available to you. If specifics aren't there, then obviously no visible marking will suffice.
Yeah, do we still got, looks like 15 folks still on. You guys still want to hear some questions? Yes or no? Hit your space bar to talk. Give us a yay or nay. We'll keep going a little bit here. All right. Since they're still on, JC, I think we'll keep going.
All right.
I've got a call at 12:30 here. So here's one. Pawnbroker asking about redeeming a pawned handgun to an out-of-state resident. Can I do that?
As long as it's the same person.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So out-of-state handguns can be pawned by residents out of state if you're a pawnbroker, as long as they're returned to that same person.
Yep.
Right.
Have to be returned to the same person.
That is probably the only exception for handgun transfers out of state. Make sure you're checking box 7, is it? Yep, box 7 for redemption.
Yep. Yep.
Make sure you put a little note in box 32, because an ATF agent is going to look at that quickly and say, wait a minute, out of state bad transfer.
Yeah.
Yep. How do I properly classify a Glock lower receiver pistol? Glock, just a lower receiver frame.
No way, it's a frame. You would identify it as a frame in your acquisition and disposition, or on the 4473. Just a frame.
Is it legal to receive via USPS from a non-licensed handgun? Can I receive a handgun via USPS from a non-licensee for a local transfer? Is this legal?
Well, it's a violation of postal code to ship a handgun via the postal service, although it does happen. But yes, you can. We run into this quite a bit where people are just not even notifying the FFL that they're sending a firearm. What you would do in this situation is hopefully they send you a copy of their driver's license and their personal information, so you can enter it into your A&D records as acquired from the individual.
Yeah. Well, JC, the rest of these are state, a lot of state issues. Different types of legalities regarding selling to out-of-state residents, types of firearms. I guess we'll let's just go ahead and call it quits here. So listen, folks, we'll get this out on YouTube probably within a couple of days. Let us get our new email system up and running. We'll send you the link. But look, just if you go out to our YouTube, make sure you please subscribe and hit that bell out on our YouTube, FFL Consultants on YouTube, so you get alerted to when we do post our new training documents and recorded sessions. Love you guys. Love when you call. If you got any questions about anything, firearms, give JC or myself a call, or drop us an email. Anything else?
Yeah, hey, Mark, you wrote in the notes in the chat here, I'm a pawnbroker with a FFL NFA. Why can't I pawn class 3? Because you would have to do a form 4 from the individual back to you. It's a transfer of the firearm. You are gaining control of it. That's why you can't pawn class 3s.
JC, I didn't check the chat, but there's a couple more.
I'm watching the chat. I only got the one.
Oh, how about it says in Texas, older woman will have their maiden. This is from Bernadette. Older woman will have the maiden name as their middle name on the driver's license. Makes sense. I guess it was required by that way, but I see a lot of folks use the middle name or maiden name as a hyphenated last name. What should they put on the 4473? The maiden name, or match the driver's license, or the middle name? I would suggest that they match their driver's license. Their ID.
It has to match their ID.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and again, in box 32, you could put notes if you have an odd situation. In this case, you're using the hyphen. It sounds like the hyphenated middle and last name on their driver's license somehow has to be explained on box 32 on your form 4473.
Yep.
And this one I would keep a copy too. We tell people we don't preach keep copies of everything. In fact, it's better not to, unless you have to, required by law. But in this case, I would say, yeah, keep a copy of that driver's license so you can show the ATF what you were trying to do when it occurred.
Yeah.
that can help.
Do you have a question about a Kel-Tec CMR 30? Is it considered a rifle or a pistol? Can it be shoulder fired? If Kel-Tec sends it to you as a rifle, well, yeah, a lot of different firearms can be fired, collapsed with the stock collapse. The fact of the matter is the firearm is meant to be shoulder fired. It is considered a rifle even with a collapsible stock.
Yep. That's very similar to the Mossberg combination kits or the Remington combo kits. They sell them with the stock installed. They give you a pistol grip, in the box. It's convertible, but it should be brought in and sold as a long gun unless you remove the stock. I mean,
And if you do that, that's considered manufacturing. Please don't do that and not file your appropriate paperwork and record it as such. If you get one of those combination rifles, or rather shotguns in where it has the stock and a pistol grip separately and they are not attached, you need to check with your wholesaler distributor and see how they sent it to you, and make sure that it remains in the original configuration. Do not get caught transitioning that rifle, or that shotgun rather, from a shotgun to a pistol grip firearm. That is considered manufacturing. I have an FFL that did it for about 10 to 12 shotguns in that configuration where neither the stock or the pistol grip was attached. And because it looks cooler and will sell better with the pistol grip, they went ahead and put the pistol grip on there, and lo and behold, didn't realize that was considered manufacturing, and they actually got in trouble for it.
Got JC from Alex. So if a NICS check expires without a response, you must start a new one. And how do you record the new NTN number?
If a NICS, so the 30 days is gone, you've not gotten a response, and in your state, you're required to wait until you get an actual approval, I would assume. So
no, JC, it's the NICS check expires, right? It comes up to the expiration date with a
30 days. Yep.
Yeah, and no response has been received from NICS. I'm in Texas. It's allowed to be transferred.
Yeah, it's allowed to be transferred in Texas. If the period expired, if the 30 days is done, that 4473 is dead. Have them redo a 4473 and restart the process.
Yeah.
So you have to have them redo a 4473 and restart.
Yes. The reason being is because that NTN number is associated with that 4473. So you want to keep record of that, because as I said earlier, when the IOI shows up to do your inspection, they're going to go one for every next transaction number.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, JB.
Yeah, and the same question. I had one last week. I was in a store, a gun dealer, and nice outdoor sporting goods store, and they were missing an NTN number on a 4473, simply missing it, and it was about 2 weeks old. And they were holding it for me, and I knew I was coming. I said, "What do we do with this one?" And there's no way to retrieve and they said it was approved. There's no way to retrieve an approved NTN number by easily calling the ATF or the FBI, rather, NICS. So we called our friends down there, and they said simply, they couldn't reference and approve. It all gets purged after 72 hours for approvals. So they simply had the person resubmit that, and the gun wasn't picked up yet, thankfully. Somebody was out of town, but they said simply resubmit the same information, use the same 4473. You already have the certification from the customer. We're going to give you, push it through. They got an approval number, they resubmitted it, but they put all the notes in box 32, including the NICS operator number. So everything was good. There's always ways to fix these. And that was a lot better. We had to put missing one, because when the ATF shows up to do their inspection, they're going to have that missing number on the report, and they're going to be looking for it.
Yeah, because this one, the firearm's already been transferred on this case, and there's still a open status from NICS.
Right. Open status with NICS simply says they're still working it, the background, they're still conducting a background check. It hasn't been closed yet on their end.
Right.
And they can work that up to about 85 days, I believe, before they decide not to work it anymore.
So what do you recommend on, should I have the customer do another 4473, even though the gun's already been transferred?
No. In Texas, you're allowed to transfer after waiting 3 business days, which is really 5, right?
Yeah.
5 days from the date of transfer, from the date of signature. Yeah, if you transferred it after that wait, the 3-day wait, Brady dates expired, you can transfer and nothing else has to occur on that other than checking box 27D, the bottom box there that says no response was provided within 3 business days. You're good to go.
So yeah, no other 4473, no nothing, just
Nope.
keep watching my NICS reports.
Just complete your next, make sure your transfer date was correct in box 36 and you should be fine. Just file it.
Awesome. Sounds good.
JC,
On
I
that,
think-
on that Caltech CMR 30, so in A&D book, it needs to be a rifle. But for Michigan, we have to do a pistol. If Michigan requires you to do a, what's it called, a pistol record, sales record, PSR, that's fine. The fact of the matter is it's still a rifle. It's intended to be shoulder fired. If Michigan has a nuance within their state laws that requires you based on the length of the firearm that has a collapsible stock and can be fired, then so be it. You're going to have to do what Michigan requires you to do as well. But from an acquisition and disposition record bookkeeping, I will tell you that that is a rifle.
Yeah. I'm going to throw this in too. So I think Pennsylvania folks have departed the call, but so Pennsylvania is a point of contact state for handguns. And they consider shockwaves handguns in Pennsylvania. There is no other category in Pennsylvania for firearms.
Yeah.
So it gets confusing because on the ATF form 4473, it's an other / firearm as a type. But in Pennsylvania, it's a handgun / pistol.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful with your state regulations. Just make sure you're asking about all the little do's and don'ts on the little stuff. We can help with that. JC, we have one more. Here's for firearms. Fred, explain the A&D book issue with the 4 items already ready to ship. So Fred, that was simply this. Since the firearms were in boxes on the back loading dock waiting for UPS, and the ATF inspector was in the store doing an audit, doing an inspection, he knew, I mean, he was probably waiting for this to happen. He knew that guns were on the dock waiting to be shipped. It was a pretty active transfer location. And he went and said, oh, by the way, what are the guns out here on the receiving dock to be shipped? And they said, yeah, these 4 are going to, transfers out. And tell our FFLs, and they were already disposed out of the gun as complete, out of the A&D book as completed. And they were actually disposed, it wasn't that day, it was actually the day prior. Because of the way they sold them the day prior through the system, online sales, if you have a website or, dealing with a gun broker or anything else, selling, he just, the POS system, because he collected money or closed out the sale in his POS system, the system automatically disposed of that firearm thinking it was leaving the store today, the same day as the sale. And there was a glitch in the POS system. You should have had an option to actually update or edit that disposition date. We found out later that there was a way to do that, but he didn't know it. So the ATF agent cited him for disposing of 4 firearms out of his disposition side of his book or system before they actually left the building. They were still there. And he got cited for inaccuracies. He should have waited till they actually got on the truck and left the property to go ahead and dispose of those firearms out of his record keeping system. Hopefully that clears that up. So, all right, JC, I think we're good.
All right. Well, thanks
Thank you,
everybody
man.
for joining us today. And if you have anything that you didn't want to ask publicly, feel free to reach out to us, either call, text, or email.
Have a great month and happy holidays. Turkey, turkey, gobble, gobble. See you.
Thanks, y'all.